Prabhu, can you turn on the microphone?
Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Ashtotara Shata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Ashtotara Shata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Samaveda Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 8, text number 10. So it's prose. I won't try to chant it, but Nunam Hi Arya Sadhava Upashamashila Kripana Suhrida Evam Vidharte Svarthan Api Gurutaran Upekshante. I'll just read the word for words. Nunam, indeed. He, certainly. Arya, those who are advanced in civilization. Sadhava, saintly persons. Upashamashila, even though completely in the renounced order of life. Kripana Suhridha, the friends of the helpless. Evam Vida Arte, to execute such principles. Sva-arthan api, even their own personal interests. Gurutaran, very important. Upekshante, neglect. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Even though one is in the renounced order, one who is advanced certainly feels compassion for suffering living entities. One should certainly neglect his own personal interests, although they may be very important, to protect one who has surrendered. Purport. Maya is very strong. In the name of philanthropy, altruism, and communism, people are feeling compassion for suffering humanity throughout the world. Philanthropists and altruists do not realize that it is impossible to improve people's material conditions. Material conditions are already established by the superior administration according to one's karma. They cannot be changed. The only benefit we can render to suffering beings is to try to raise them to spiritual consciousness. Material comforts cannot be increased or decreased. It is therefore said in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.18, Talabhyate dukavad anyata sukham. As far as material happiness is concerned, that comes without effort, just as tribulations come without effort. Material happiness and pain can be attained without endeavor. One should not bother for material activities. If one is at all sympathetic or able to do good to others, he should endeavor to raise people to Krishna consciousness. In this way, everyone advances spiritually by the grace of the Lord. For our instruction, Bharat Maharaj acted in such a way. We should be very careful not to be misled by so-called welfare activities conducted in bodily terms. One should not give up his interest in attaining the favor of Lord Vishnu at any cost. Generally, people do not know this, or they forget it. Consequently, they sacrifice their original interests, the attainment of Vishnu's favor, and engage in philanthropic activities for bodily comfort. Om Ajnanatimidandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahakana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitangscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kantha Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vansha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So, let's see. Yeah, so in this verse, Bharat Maharaj, in the last couple verses, it's appearing that Bharat Maharaj is becoming very attached to the deer. Of course, that's the whole pastime. But he's beginning now to logically justify it. And this is something that the mind does, because the mind always wants to enjoy, always wants to experience material enjoyment. And so it always tries to think up different ways to enjoy the material nature. It always is making some kind of argument. Like, I guess in like cartoons. And I'm not sure exactly where this originates from, but you have like the devil and the angel on your shoulder telling you different things. So the mind is like that. The mind is like the devil on your shoulder. It's telling you to do this, do that. And even it'll make up some argument to do it. Like you have a brahmachari and he's hanging out with a bunch of women. You say, oh, it's for preaching, Prabhu. And so, things like that. The mind tries to make various arguments to facilitate material enjoyment. So we have to be very vigilant. We have to be very vigilant against Maya's tricks to try to get us to fall back into material enjoyment. And even also it might even be a good argument. Like Bharat Maharaj's statement in this verse, it's not a bad statement. Even though one is in the renounced order, one who is advanced certainly feels compassion for suffering living entities. One should certainly neglect his own personal interests, although they may be very important to protect one who has surrendered. That's not a bad principle. It's a good principle, actually. Devotees should be compassionate. Bharat Maharaj was a devotee. So devotees should be compassionate. It's not that one becomes, is in the renounced order and just becomes like a stone, like a heartless stone. Because that's what impersonalists do. That's what they engage in so much austerity, and they become very hard-hearted. And they have no, then they just go off into the forest and they just, whatever, sit there and say Om or something. And so, yeah, devotees should be compassionate, and that's the whole Sankirtan movement. Impersonalists, their intelligence is impure. Like there's a verse in Bhagavatam, Yenye Ravindaksha Vimuktamaninas Tvayasta Bhava Devishuddha Buddhayaha Auruhya Kritstrena Parampadam Tata Patantyado Nadata Yushmat Angreha. That impersonalists, they engage in so much austerity to reach the highest platform, but their intelligence is completely impure. And eventually they fall down because they have no regard for the lotus feet of Krishna. So, like one devotee asked His Holiness Bhakti Vikas Swami he holds these Shravanam Kirtanam camps. I think it's Shravan, anyway. So it's where there's Kirtan and there's Katha and all these different things. That's usually he comes to one place in America and does that. And so one devotee there asked him, he said, Guru Maharaj, if we're chanting japa and we see somebody drowning, should we save them? And of course the answer is yes. The answer is yes. It's not that we're not just like dull stones. Of course we should save them, but eventually we should go back to our japa. It's not that we should completely stop our japa and just surrender to this person, surrender to serving their every, wish. Of course it depends on the person. But anyway, the principle is that Vaishnavas, they're soft-hearted. And so they're always compassionate to all the living entities. And like I said earlier, this is the entire, purpose behind the Sankirtan movement is to extend compassion to the fallen conditioned souls. And compassion, it doesn't mean bodily compassion, like Prabhupada's saying in this purport. Because compassion for the body is useless. You can feed somebody for a day, you can, so many doctors in the world, so many organizations feeding people, so many doctors in the world. But everyone you feed, they're going to die anyway. You've basically, the whole thing behind bodily welfare, the whole principle behind bodily welfare, it's like in a boxing match. In the boxing match you have the corners where there's one fighter and there's another fighter. And, they're going at it, they're, punching each other, kicking, whatever, as like boxers do. And then they go back to their corner and they just get patched up and then boom, they're thrown right back in the ring. And so that's exactly what all this mundane welfare work is. That's exactly what, doctors do. And that's not to say that doctors are bad. It's not to say that we shouldn't have doctors. But to think that that's the highest thing, to think that that's the purpose of life, is to just patch people up and throw them back in the ring, that's complete illusion. Because actually we're not these bodies, and these bodies are completely temporary. But the soul within the body, who is actually the living entity within the body, separate from the body, is eternal. And so, like Prabhupada is saying in this purport, material happiness and pain, material conditions are already established by the superior administration according to one's karma. They cannot be changed. The only benefit we can render to suffering beings is to try to raise them to spiritual consciousness. So yeah, and this is why we go out and preach. This is why we go, Harinam, book distribution, prasadam distribution. This is why we have preaching programs. We're extending ourselves to the fallen conditioned souls, and we're trying to bring them back to Krishna's lotus feet, because that's exactly where they belong. Everybody, whether they're a devotee or not, they have a svarup, they have an eternal relationship, an eternal form in the spiritual world, and an eternal relationship with Krishna. And so whether they, and this is, like I said, whether they know it or not, but they've been here for a really, really long time. I mean, just one life of Brahma, 311 trillion 40 billion years. That's one life of Brahma. And then, all the living entities, all the universes there, Mahavishnu inhales them again. And then they're dormant. They're just like in a sleeping state for another 311 trillion 40 billion years. And then again and again and again. And we've been doing this for so long, it's like practically we've been in the material world eternally. So, so they've been here for a really long time. And when you're here for a long time, when you're doing anything for a long time, you develop a taste for it. You develop like a momentum in that particular direction. So they're very resistant. They're very resistant, despite the fact that this material world is actually a miserable place, and they're not happy at every step they're suffering. Padam padam yadvi padam natesham. At every single step they're suffering, but still they're attached to being here. It's yeah. And so, for example, like Indra. Of course, Indra's the king of heaven. He lives in unimaginable opulence, but he was cursed by Brihaspati to become a hog in the material world. And so, he's there, he's got his hog wife, he's got his hog children, and things in the heavenly planets, without him, they were going south. So Brahma came and said, Indra, we need you back in the heavenly planets. And he goes, no way. There's no way. My children are growing up, I've got my wife, I have responsibility here. He's like, come on, Brahma. So even people are living like hogs. They're living like hogs, dogs, camels, and asses, but still they're attached to, they want to stay. So it's our job to convince them as devotees, as people who know what the real purpose of life is. It's our job to convince them. But it's difficult. It's difficult, and it can be very austere. Because people have all kinds of crazy ideas. Like I was distributing books. And some guy came up to the table, just like he was like yelling. He was really angry, and he was saying, "Oh, like he's like, are you talking about religion?" And I said, "Well, yeah." I said, "Yes." And then anyway, the guy turned out to be he didn't say this expressly, but he was some Muslim guy, I could definitely tell. And he was saying, "Oh, your people are killing my people in India." But then he was also playing like an atheist too. So it was really confusing. So anyway, people have all kinds of crazy ideas. And so, yeah, preaching to people can be very austere. But we do it anyway. We undergo that austerity out of compassion, for the benefit of the fallen conditioned souls, for the benefit of everybody in the world. And this is the highest welfare work. And so that's kind of what Bharat Maharaj is saying in this verse. That even though one who is advanced feels compassion for suffering living entities, one should certainly neglect his own personal interests, although they may be very important. So it's a good principle. It's not a bad principle, but if it's misapplied, it can lead to degradation rather than elevation. And in a lot of ways, it's similar to Arjuna's arguments at the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita when he didn't want to fight. When he didn't want to fight the battle of Kurukshetra. They were good arguments, We don't want to kill our family and friends. We don't want to, if these men are killed, then what will happen to their families? Their families will be devolved into irreligion. And so much, Varna Sankara, all these different things. They're good arguments. They're arguments based on the Vedas. Good arguments. But they were made in the background, in the context, or on the grounds of his own personal attachment. Of course, Arjuna is a pure devotee, and he was speaking like this to induce Krishna to speak the Bhagavad Gita, so it was all planned out. It's not like Arjuna is in Maya. But, of course, externally speaking. So, yeah, and then also it's evident here that Bharat Maharaj, he hadn't completely given up his Krishna conscious philosophy, because this is, I mean, it's a noble principle. I mean, a gross materialist, sense enjoyer probably wouldn't think like this. One should certainly neglect his own principle. It's a noble principle, noble statement. But the practical attachment, or the practical application of it would, of course, cause him to forget his spiritual life, to neglect his spiritual life. Yeah. But this same understanding, the same Krishna conscious philosophy, it's what impelled him to leave everything. Of course, everything for some people means a house and a car and a family. But for Bharat Maharaj, he actually left everything. He left the entire planet. He ruled the whole world. So he left the entire planet. He actually left everything. But although he had this understanding, like Prabhupada, this is one of Prabhupada's aphorisms. Vijay was talking about Prabhupada's first sentences, how they're all really deep. This is another one. Maya is very strong. So yeah, Maya is very strong. And Bharat Maharaj knew that, of course. That's why he left in the forest. And even in the forest, it's not like he was bird watching or something. He was, he was engaging in austerities. He was engaging in austerities to even whatever little possibility for sense gratification there is in a forest. I mean, what are you going to, in a forest? How are you going to gratify your senses in a forest? But he wanted to eliminate any possibility of sense gratification. That's the purpose of going to the forest. One, to get away from gross sense gratification, but even while you're in the forest, to engage in austerities, to completely get rid of any possibility of even subtle sense gratification. But of course, this pastime, it shows, it demonstrates how there's many levels to desire. And many levels of desire on many different levels of consciousness. Like Prabhupada describes the subtle body, it's like a storehouse of all of our material desires. And so even if we don't have a gross, blatant desire for something, like I'm not, if I wasn't sitting, sitting here and I'm thinking oh man, I really want peanut butter halva, and I can't get peanut butter halva out of my head. That's all I'm thinking about. Even if it's not a gross desire, we have some scars. We have some scars embedded into our consciousness on a subconscious level, and we're mostly unaware of them because we have so many, and even the littlest thing can make an impression, can make a samskar. And we have so many of them, and largely we're unaware of them. But these samskars, they influence our general tendencies. For example, like sex desire. Everybody in this material world is afflicted by sex desire, whether they want to believe it or not. But sex desire, it's practically embedded within everybody in the material world. But it's not like everybody's always just thinking, I need to have sex right now. It's not like it's always in the front of their mind. But when they come in contact with a member of the opposite sex, that sex desire goes from a general desire, a general tendency, to a specific desire. It becomes pointed, And so, of course, that's unless one is self-realized. And so, within Bharat Maharaj, there was clearly some sort of very subtle, very, very, very subtle desire to enjoy. Of course, also, like I said earlier about Arjuna, Bharat Maharaj, he was a devotee, and this whole pastime it took place by Krishna's arrangement, so that he could be an example. So yeah, Bharat Maharaj's desire, it wasn't like a gross desire to just enjoy the material world, but previously he was a king. So kings, they're very noble, they're protectors, and so clearly he still had some desire for that, and he wanted to be the protector, in this case, of a deer. And so this desire that he had within his head, it manifested when he saw the deer. And so we have to be careful what we expose ourselves to. We shouldn't think that we're, above Maya. Like Prabhupada said, or one devotee told Prabhupada, he said, I just want to come back birth after birth and distribute your books. And Prabhupada said, don't think you're so advanced. So we should be careful not to think ourselves more advanced than we actually are. We should act according to our position. And of course, and Bharat Maharaj, he was on the Bhava platform. He was approaching pure love of God. He was approaching Krishna Prema. But even up to that platform, he still had some subtle anartha. So what to speak of us on the platform of anartha nivritti? And so it's difficult, of course, to overcome, but we have to overcome it, and that's the process of Krishna consciousness. The process of Krishna consciousness is overcoming our anarthas, overcoming this momentum that we've built up over lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes of being in the material world and just indulging in material enjoyment. And it's an uphill battle. Like I think it was Shivaram Swami in one of his books, I heard from one devotee. He described devotional service, the process of devotional service. It's like pushing a big steel ball up a hill. And so, you're struggling so much, and it's a big hill, and it's really difficult. It's difficult to push a steel ball up a hill. I don't know if anyone's ever tried that before, but it sounds difficult to me. And Prabhupada said, you Westerners, of course this is speaking for the Westerners in the room, which is most of us, but he said, you Westerners are cursed with lust. And lust meaning lust to enjoy the material world, not necessarily just sex desire. We're cursed with lust. Of course, everyone in the material world is also cursed with lust. That's why they're here. But I guess Westerners, it's a specifically gross kind of lust. And this lust, it's our greatest enemy. Because this lust, it completely bewilders our intelligence and just throws us back into the material whirlpool. But of course, in the material world, people, they wear it like a badge of honor. That was from a class from Rajendra Nandana Prabhu. He said people. He said specifically about people in the West that they wear lust like a badge of honor. I thought that was a nice analogy. They wear lust like a badge of honor. And practically you can see that if you just walk outside. If you just walk outside, everywhere you look, everyone's saying just indulge, enjoy your senses, and don't hold back, and just relax. You don't have to do all this religion stuff, and you can just forget God and just indulge your senses, and that's how you'll be happy. But practically speaking, none of them actually look around and consider that everybody's doing that, but who's actually happy? None of them are happy. They're all suffering. They're all miserable. And that's the nature of lust. It just completely bewilders your intelligence. It completely blinds you from understanding the actual truth about things. Even relative truths, it completely blinds you. Like, anyway, we don't have to go into examples. But even relative truths, like, I guess you could say, people, due to lust, they might think themselves more handsome than they actually are, or they think that everybody loves them, or just like this insane narcissistic kind of thing. It's a result of lust. And so even relative truths, even though they may be a complete loser, even materially speaking, this lust, it completely blinds one, even to relative truths. What to speak of the absolute truth? It said in Bhagavad Gita, Dhyayato Vishayam Pungsa Sangasteshu Bhajayate Sangat Sanjayate Kama Kamat Krodha Bijayate Krodad Bhavati Sammoha Somahat Smriti Vibramaha Smriti Brahmashad Buddhinasho Buddhinasha Pranashyati. That as a result of lust, it's a whole sequence of things, but as a result of lust, frustrated lust leads to anger, and anger leads to bewilderment of memory, and bewilderment of memory leads to loss of intelligence, And when one's intelligence is lost, he falls back into the material pool. And so Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he says that when we feel tempted by Maya, when we feel tempted by lust for enjoying the material world, we should loudly call out the name of our Guru. And if we loudly cry out to the Guru's there. And if we really want his protection, he'll help us. He'll come and he'll help us. Just like Giriraj Swami was in Bombay. He was Giriraj Das Brahmachari at the time. He was in Bombay, and Mr. Nair, this envious, demoniac person, who gave the devotees so much trouble over that land for the Juhu temple. He wanted to seduce Giriraj Das Brahmachari at the time, and so he put a prostitute next to him in the car to try to get him to fall down. So whatever this prostitute was, touched his leg or something like that, and he's a brahmachari at the time, and immediately he thought of his spiritual master. He thought, how would this make Prabhupada look? How would this look for the devotees? He said, I could just let my senses go wild, but how would that make Prabhupada look? How would that make the devotees look? And so only a devotee who's fully engaged in the process of Krishna consciousness, whose senses are fully engaged in Krishna consciousness, has no problem controlling the senses. And this is the actual definition of samadhi, to have all the senses engaged in Krishna service. To engage the eyes in seeing the form of the deity, to engage the ears in hearing the holy name, the tongue in chanting and tasting prasadam, the legs and walking to different places of pilgrimage, going on parikram, and so to engage all of the senses of the body, the working senses and the knowledge gathering senses in the service of the Lord, and that's how to properly control the senses. And so this pastime of Bharat Maharaj, the whole point was to show us that we have to be vigilant. Because if left to its own devices, the mind just goes off in so many different directions. And we have practical experience of this. I know I have practical experience of this in chanting japa. In chanting japa, the whole point is, you sit there and you just chant the holy name and you hear the holy name and that's it. But the mind takes you to so many different places, and you're thinking this and that, and you're thinking, oh, my schedule later, and I have to do this today, and I have to do that today, and oh, this devotee's chanting too loud, or my back hurts, and so many different things. And then at least I've had the experience where I just realized that I'm not even chanting anymore. I'm just sitting there and thinking, and you're staring off, and so yeah, the mind it just takes us in so many different directions. It's like a roller coaster, and it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much to divert the mind, because the mind's always looking. Just like the mind's always vigilant to see, okay, what can I enjoy? How can I stop this? How can I hinder devotional service? So the mind's always vigilant. So we should always be vigilant. Like earlier in this canto, we were hearing about Maharaj Agnidra, and he was, he was engaging in austerities at Mandara Hill, and then he had his eyes half open. And he was, meditating, and then all he heard, he just heard the ankle bells of Purvachiti, and it was enough to break his meditation, and he began fawning over her. There was that whole chapter. And then also in the ninth canto, Saubhari Muni, 6th chapter of the ninth canto, Saubhari Muni, he was engaged in austerities underwater for thousands of years. And then he saw two fish copulating one day out of the blue. He saw two fish copulating, and that was it. He left the water. He was all wrinkled, and the story goes that he went to, I forgot the king's name, but he went to king, and his daughters were there, and anyway, he made himself very beautiful, and he ended up marrying all these daughters of this king. And so just like the mind's vigilant, we also have to be vigilant to prevent the mind. We have to rein it in. And also, it also requires introspection. We have to be introspective of why we're doing what we're doing. Because it's very easy to control the mind, and it's very easy to engage in the process of Krishna consciousness if we have the proper perspective. Like there's that phrase, keep your eyes on the prize. So if we keep our eyes on the prize being going back to Godhead and engaging in our eternal relationship with Krishna, and no worries, no anxieties, no stress, no anything. Just one day, how it's described, one day we will just wake up in the spiritual world, and our whole foray in this material world, all the suffering, all the birth, all the death, everything we've ever experienced in this material world, trillions and trillions, unlimited practically amount of time we've been in the material world, all of that will just be like a faint memory of a dream that we had. And so if we keep our eyes on the prize, that prize, everything else it just completely pales in comparison. It's just like Dhruva Maharaj, it's like broken glass. Everything that's material is just like broken glass when you just think about the fact that one day we'll wake up in the spiritual world and we'll just fall right back in and just engage in the service and engage in our relationship with Krishna, which is our actual position. It's who we actually are. And so that's our goal. That's what we should be striving for. And if we keep that in the front of our mind, then it's easy to be enthused in Krishna consciousness. Of course, easier said than done. But that's all I have prepared. If anybody has any questions or comments or concerns, criticisms.
Thank you for the class.
You're welcome for the class.
Wonderful class. In the purport it says, philanthropists and altruists do not realize that it is impossible to improve people's material conditions. And it also says, material comforts cannot be increased or decreased. And something came to mind, like before, it was so much harder for a person to get to increase the material comfort, by going out and buying a house or buying a car. But now it's so much easier with loans and debts and mortgages and things like that. So I was wondering if you could comment on, to me it doesn't really, I can't make sense out of how material comforts cannot be increased in that way if we see that people can get things much easier nowadays.
Sure. I mean, they can get things much easier, but you could have a big house and not be comfortable. You can have a big house and then, get I guess smallpox isn't around anymore. But you can have a big house and get some horrible disease still. So the principle is that it's all karma. That everybody's just reaping the results of their past activities. So material comforts, in one sense, can be increased or decreased, but not externally. Like it's not like I can't impact your karma. Like if I no matter what I do, no matter what if I feed you so much, if I clothe you so nicely, if I no matter what, you're not getting more than what you're due. It's not like I'm giving you something extra that you weren't already going to get. I just happen to be the one giving it to you. So the idea is that we don't have any more suffering or any more pleasure in this life than we are due. And when we're born, when we take this birth, when we receive this body, the suffering and the happiness that we feel in this life, all of it is predestined. So that's the principle. So of course it may be easier to get a house nowadays, maybe easier, but that's not necessarily what Prabhupada is saying in the verse, because he's more talking about bodily suffering. Yeah.
Hare Krishna?
Yes, Vijay Krishna Prabhu, we have one more in-house question, and then I can get to you.
Yes, I can wait.
Yeah, I just wanted to also maybe visit that question. In my observations, I've noticed many individuals that sought to improve their personal comforts, internal to the body, the mind, emotions, and external. And it brings to mind, motivational speakers, very popular, famous ones that consult like presidents and kings and so forth. And they're online now talking to tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people, every few months. They're impacting hundreds of thousands of people's imprinting on them, motivating those individuals to try to improve their comforts. And in observing what actually happens is, I don't see a lot of people actually changing much of what happens. There's a few that may be impacted, but let's say somebody wants to become a multimillionaire or a billionaire, or a billionaire wants to become a trillionaire. I've seen so many people pursue wealth, and very, very few of them actually changed the situation that they were in. People went out and they got loans, they bought homes, and they lost the homes. So it does appear to me to be very valid and factual what this verse says as far as individuals, right, do what they're going to do and not being able to gain more or less, because it depends upon their karma. And, we have popular things like The Secret or Think and Grow Rich, or Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So many things trying to influence individuals, to imprint on them that they can think and grow rich. Yet, if you just observe, the reality does appear to be that they're just striving in vain. And whoever's due like a certain amount of wealth or pleasure or comfort, that comes to them naturally. Whoever isn't, they're just going to be striving for something that isn't. And some of them strive so hard they actually go mentally insane.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a nice point. Thanks for that. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and even you could say, even if they did get it, still you could understand, okay, well, that's what they were doing. They were going to get it anyway. So, yeah, and thank you. That's a nice point. Okay, Vijay Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Amogha Prabhu. My question is related to the following quote, related to the purpose, to the verse you chose for today, 5, 8, 10.
Yes.
Quote, one should not give up his interest in attaining the favor of Lord Vishnu at any cost, end quote. So, Prabhu, my question is, in what measure lack of patience can make us give up our interest in attaining the favor of Lord Vishnu? Because it may take a lot of time.
Yeah, well, Krishna doesn't work on our time. Krishna works on his time. So, like devotees asked Prabhupada, of course, we can become pure devotees in a moment. That's what Prabhupada said. We can become pure devotees in a moment. But we have to be sincere. It depends on our sincerity. And Krishna will reciprocate with that sincerity. But if we're insincere, it can take a long time. It can take a long time. So, but also we may just have so much dirt on our heart that it may just take a long time to clear all that up. But if we're sincere, there's no reason that we shouldn't quickly make advancement. Of course, Krishna's mercy is always there. Krishna's the one bestowing that advancement upon us. And so, like I said, Krishna does work on his own time. But he will reciprocate with devotees who are sincere. And if you're not patient, then you won't be able to tolerate tolerate the process of devotional service, because it can take a lot of time. It can take a lot of time to clear up all of our, anarthas. It might seem like we're, just running around in circles, chasing our own tail sometimes. So you have to be patient with yourself. You have to be patient in regards to waiting for Krishna also. So yeah, without patience, you won't be. And practically, lack of patience means you're still in the mode of in the modes of material nature. Impatience is a rajasic thing. So to be impatient means that you're still in the modes of material nature. So if we're becoming more patient, then we should understand that we're making more advancement. We're making advancement in Krishna consciousness, making advancement in getting out of the modes of material nature. So is that okay?
Yes, it is okay. And if I may,
You may.
Because of your spectacular answer to my question, it came to my mind the following saying related to one of Srila Prabhupada's Bhaktivedanta purpose to Bhagavad Gita as it is. One of the verses, I do not remember now which. Mm-hmm. God helps the one who
helps
the
himself.
one to.
Yeah, God helps those who help themselves.
Yes. Do you think that this quote is in harmony with the answer you just gave me?
Yeah, definitely. Because like I was saying, you have to be sincere, and Krishna will reciprocate with that sincerity. So if we help ourselves, Krishna is more inclined to help us. Yeah.
Okay, Prabhu. Again, a spectacular answer to my question. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
You're welcome.
Govardhan Prabhu, please.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Amogha, Lila, Dasa.
Hare Krishna.
So, your class reminded me of when Manibandini Prabhu, he picked me and Maharaj up at the airport. And, you were talking about the mind, how we easily distracted and, it thinks of subtle sex or desires, things like that. So Maharaj was saying, there's creamsicles. And he was saying saffron on the outside, but on the inside they're thinking about getting married and this and that. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, creamsicles. Jai. Saffron on the outside, white on the inside. Jai. What about you, Prakash? Do you have anything else?
So in this verse, I was thinking like in the last sentence of the translation, it says like one should certainly neglect his own personal interests, although they may be very important to protect one who has surrendered.
Yeah.
I was thinking maybe like for devotees, it's like one should certainly neglect his own personal interests, even though they are important, to surrender to Krishna or something like that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Give up your own personal interest to surrender to Krishna. Yeah. Yeah, it's good. Jai, thanks, bro. Okay. Any last questions, comments, criticisms, concerns, chastisements? Later, yeah. Yeah, okay. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.